Wagwan YouTube, it's your boy TC back with another video, and this time we're looking at Arsene Wenger's 10 best signings. Since we're currently in transfer mode and transfer season, we thought we'd make a quick video on Arsene Wenger's quick signings. This is my personal opinion, so if you guys think there are other players that should have gone in the list, obviously please leave your comments below. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So the first player on the list would be, in my opinion, Mikel Arteta. Mikel Arteta was bought in from Everton for £10 million back in 2011. There are obviously good reasons to argue that the likes of Emmanuel Petit or Freddie Ljungberg should be included on this list ahead of Mikel Arteta, but there were different signings in being additional components to already great teams. Arteta might have been bought for a premium price for a 29-year-old, but his influence both on the pitch and in the dressing room was at times the glue that has held Arsenal together during some difficult periods in the most recent years. So, as mentioned, Arteta joined from Everton in 2011. When he joined, I was extremely excited because prior to that, he'd had two fantastic seasons at Everton. He'd been there for years, been solid and performed at a consistent level for a number of years before we went in and scooped in. In my opinion, it worked out as a bargain for £10 million. However, he did suffer some injury problems during his time at the club. But in my opinion, this was one of Wenger's top signings. Moving on, we've got Cesc Fabregas. Fabregas was bought from Barcelona for a compensation fee of £500,000 back in 2003 and sold back to Barcelona in 2011 for £35 million. That's what you call good business, in my opinion. That's very good business, but not good for footballing reasons. So at the time when Fabregas came, he was a young footballer who'd come in from Barcelona, and he'd gone through the famed Barcelona Academy. And I think Wenger had been tracking him for a number of years, and they knew what his capabilities were, what his technical abilities were. It didn't take long for Fabregas to join the Arsenal first team, and he became Arsenal's youngest ever captain. He performed fantastically during the whole time, and I particularly liked the fight he used to show, or the passion he used to show when we played Chelsea in particular. One game in particular I do remember was one when he was actually going to fight Frank Lampard. Obviously they weren't going to go into a full-blown fight, but for someone his size and the level his profile was at the time, you wouldn't have expected him to actually go toe-to-toe with Frank Lampard. He gave Frank Lampard a good run for his money in that game. So Fabregas turned out 303 times for Arsenal before being sold back to Barcelona for 70 times more than Wenger originally paid. Again, fantastic business from Wenger. Unfortunately, he was a fantastic player we had to let go at the time. But we get over things. We don't cry over spilt milk. We move on. Moving on, the next player would have been Robin van Persie. So as you can see, the theme is continuous. It's buying players for a very, very low fee and basically flipping them for profit. We all know Wenger studied economics back in his heyday, or when he was a young chap. So Van Persie was bought from Feyenoord in 2004 for £2.5 million. To me, that seems and comes across as a fantastic bargain. He was then sold to Manchester United back in 2012 for £24 million. Again, fantastic profit margins in my opinion. You can't do better business. But for footballing reasons, terrible. Bad decision making from Wenger. So as we all know, Van Persie was a fantastic goal scorer. Again, to be mentioned with this player. Van Persie was constantly injured during his time at Arsenal. So even though he scored fantastic goals when he came, he was sort of overshadowed by the players that were in place at the time. Again, this was a fantastic signing Wenger made. Unfortunately, we had to lose him to Premier League rival. Moving on is the most controversial player I think who has ever played for Arsenal in regards to the way and the methods he actually arrived at the club. So this player, as we all know, is Sol Campbell. He came in on a free transfer from Tottenham of all clubs in 2001. Campbell made multiple appearances for Arsenal during his 5-year tenure as the starting centre-back. One of our most memorable performances by Sol Campbell would have been at the Champions League final of 2006, where he went on to score a fantastic goal at the time, which I thought would have actually won us the Champions League. We've not been to the final since. So I think we do need Sol Campbell back at the club. As you all know, he also returned for a second spell in 2010. But it was this first period when Campbell achieved greatness as an Arsenal player. He arrived for nothing, and I think this was one of Wenger's finest signings, hence this player's on this list. Moving on, the next player on the list would be Robert Pires, who arrived from Marseille in the year 2000 for £6 million. He obviously left on a free transfer in 2006, and I think that was the final crop. That year, 2006, was the year where all the good crop of players ended up leaving Arsenal. It also included the Invincibles. So the duration between 2000 and 2006 included individuals that were involved in the Invincibles team. So Pires came in from Marseille for a measly £6 million. I wonder how much it would cost in today's market, but he also performed brilliantly during his time at Arsenal. He left for Villarreal in 2006 on a free transfer, which means we obviously didn't make any money out of him when he left in regards to the transfer. But he was part of that Invincibles team. During his time, he was hampered by severe injuries. However, he had that terrible leg break when he was at Arsenal. But I think most players, when they come back from an injury, they're never the same player. But Robert Pires, in my opinion, was an exception. He came back from that leg break and he was completely exceptional. I think he became a much better player at that point. So we'll move on. Next player will be Nicolas Anelka, who was bought from PSG in 1997 for just £500,000. So he only spent 2 seasons with us, but he was sold to Real Madrid for £22.5 million in 1999, just 2 years later. So Anelka's Arsenal years were short but very sweet. He was completely unknown when he arrived as a 17-year-old in 1997. But in tandem with Dennis Bergkamp was the attacking inspiration behind the first Premier League FA Cup double of 1998 from Wenger's team. After just 2 seasons at Arsenal, he was then sold to Real Madrid for an extraordinary profit, which we've obviously mentioned, at £22.5 million. That's incredible. It is doubtful, though, whether he has ever played better in his entire career than his 28 months at Arsenal. He performed fantastically well. I was a bit young at the time. I was just started to get into football, but I remember Anelka playing great for Arsenal. Moving on, the next player will be Kolo Toure. Kolo Toure was bought from ASEC Mimosa, which is a team based in the Ivory Coast in Africa, for just £150,000 in 2001. He was then sold to Manchester City for £16 million in 2009. Again, fantastic bit of business, incredible bit of business. So Kolo Toure was another player who not only played for Arsenal during the peak of his career, but also sold at a massive profit to Manchester City. Totally unknown when he arrived from the Ivory Coast in 2002, but went on to play more than 300 times for Arsenal, including the invincible season of 2003 to 2004. Wenger's biggest regret might be not also buying his brother when he had the chance. So we also had the chance to buy Yaya Toure. We won't talk about this in this video. That'll be reserved for another video. Moving on, the next player will be Marc Overmars, who was bought from Ajax for £5.5 million in 1997, and then again sold to Barcelona for a massive profit of £20 million in the year 2000. So that was £25 million in the year 2000. Again, that's a good £19.5 million profit Wenger made. I wonder how much Marc Overmars would cost in today's market. Please leave your comments below and let me know what you think, how much he'd actually cost today. So Overmars was another player who generated a fabulous profit, having also probably produced the best years of his career for Arsenal. He was superb during the double winning season of 98 and never again reached those heights at Barcelona. The sell, though, still allowed Wenger to buy a better player in Pires for just £6 million, as mentioned, and make a profit of £13.5 million on him. Moving on is one of my favourite players at Arsenal of all time, who was Patrick Viera, the midfield maestro. He was bought for £3.5 million from AC Milan. AC Milan obviously didn't know what they had, and this was back in 1996. He was sold for £13.5 million to Juve. Again, a fantastic profit of £10 million. That's more than 100% profit on the player. And he was sold to Juve in 2006. So Viera was one of our best leaders. I'd argue between him and Tony Adams, But Viera was an absolute lion on the pitch. He was an absolute warrior, in my opinion. So Viera was Arsenal's leader in midfield driving force during the greatest years of Wenger's reign. Viera was Wenger's first major signing upon becoming manager at Arsenal in 1996, and arguably almost his most influential. Viera was part of all 7 of Wenger's trophy-winning teams, and was also somehow still sold for a handsome profit in 2006 to Juve, when his best was behind him, so that was fantastic. So we'll move on to number 1 on the list. The final player to grace this list would be King Thierry Henry. He was bought from Juve in 1999 for £11 million. How much would he be in today's market? Would he be at the same level as Mbappe? Because at the time, I don't think Juve knew what they had. However, I'm in kind of a doubt over that, purely because they would have sold him for £11 million in 1999, and that was a lot of money. So Henry stayed at Arsenal for a good 8 years. He was sold to Barcelona in 2007 for £16 million. Again, fantastic profit. This is of a player who was sort of hit his peak, was still scoring goals, went on to Barcelona and won some trophies as well after that. So it wasn't done. But to sell him for another £5 million profit after the player had given you his best, again, you can't win better than that. So Henry arrived as a left winger, but was transformed under Wenger into the best player in the Premier League, and arguably the finest centre forward in Europe at the time. Henry was to become Arsenal's all-time record goalscorer and, by common consent, their greatest ever player. He remained an exceptional player at Barcelona, but his finest years were still at Arsenal, and he was also sold for a profit. So this is the list, my top 10 best Arsene Wenger signings. Which one's your best on the list? I think Thierry Henry, hands down, is the best on that list. But if you want to look at monetary value, I would definitely take Nicolas Anelka as the one who got the most value for money out of. Fantastic signing, brilliant profit at the end of it. So what do you guys think? Please let me know who your best signing from Wenger was. The player may not be on this list. It may be a completely different player. Again, thanks for watching, guys. Please hit the subscribe button and follow me on all my social media channels. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna talk TV. It's your boy TC, and I'm out.